So, thanks for the reminder. I wanted to talk about commentary because it was another topic that got brought up semi recently, and I'm pretty sure the mango was very polarizing in terms of opinions in regards to the commentary. I want to just talk about my own experiences and one of the difficult things that Smash has to deal with in terms of retention. So, I think one of the noble expectations that a lot of people have is that Smash commentators they do endless research on every region's like hidden boss. Like they're expected to know like over an encyclopedia knowledge of like 1,000 players, where they're from, their life story, and like what rank they are in their regions and what they play and who their training partner is. On top of that, they're expected to like learn like every kind of mechanic to like a deep level. And part of me I guess like I'll talk about my personal journey in commentary, and like kind of how this relates to everything. Like I think the big thing I've noticed, for the most part, there's a few exceptions here and there, is that what happens with Smash commentary and retention is that most of the commentators tend to be very young, and they'll be very fervent about improving their craft and researching the information, making sure they know every player, make sure that they're up to date with all the tactics and like the new innovations and also like play styles. And it gets like really exciting because once you hit your first big gig and you rise up the ranks of commentary, you do your round one pulls, you do doubles, and then eventually you evolve into doing top 64s, top 32s, and even top 8s. The issue that kind of comes up is that you kind of begin to realize how unfulfilling it gets over time, because you're putting in so much. I don't think a lot of people realize like the amount of work and maintenance it takes to just have that encyclopedia worth of knowledge to understand like the head-to-head histories. And frankly, I think it's like a wrong point of emphasis to like have to know that information. When you look at like other esports and other sports, all that information is kind of handed to them, and there's usually a broadcast team that fills in the information, all those gaps for the player, or rather for the commentator. So it's kind of silly that people like rag on commentators for not knowing every player's name. Frankly, that's a production issue, and I feel like a commentator shouldn't have to memorize everything. And so that's kind of just like one pet peeve I have. But nonetheless, I guess it's expected that like every commentator, it's like kind of like trivia. Like if somebody like on Twitch or like YouTube like sees that a commentator doesn't know a piece of information, and that Twitch chat member happens to know, then that commentator looks less credible, and they seem like they're like an idiot because like, oh my gosh, this person doesn't know like this piece of information about this player. I can't believe he's commentating. But keep in mind, like if you're on the mic for that amount of time, like you're eventually going to come across a point where you're not going to know every piece of information. So why is this kind of all relevant? I'm just trying to point out that it takes a lot of time and dedication to do that, and to be a savant at like memorizing all this information at the like tip top of your head. Another issue you kind of have is that, unlike other esports and like this in actual sports, we have an open brackets. So with like an NBA game, you're self-contained to 30 players, and you have a packet of information for those 30 players. Whereas with an open bracket, you don't know who's going to come up in your 2 hour block. You have no clue who's going to come up next, or if an upset happens, you don't really know. You typically don't have a computer in front of you, and it's poor etiquette to actually look at your phone during a cast. So you're just kind of going in blind, and you also are expected to know like every player in that block, and so that becomes like really painful to do. But I also think that like a lot of people tend to forget like the amount of knowledge you have to have is extraordinarily high. um, so once again, this is just a lot of work. I'm kind of repeating myself here. Why this is important is because when you're younger in age, when I was younger, and most of the other like top commentators were younger, when we're in college, we have all the time in the world. We live, breathe, and obsess about melee. We look at history. We like ingest like melee history, and it becomes perfectly normal to like watch, like try to watch like every stream possible, read up on everything, and spend like 20 to 30 hours a week just like consuming melee content. Whether or not it was just the sole purpose to become a bit better melee commentator, we just became like very interested in the game. Now the issue is that as you get older and you have a career, and you also have significant others, relationships, and families to be worried about, that time you have becomes a lot more difficult, because now you have the decision of, well, do I work late for my career? Do I, go out with my significant other, or do I watch and study 3 to 4 hours of melee? And the decisions to maintain that amount of information becomes a lot more difficult to handle. And over time, like if you're not like up to date and you're not doing your research, it generally really shows in like a matter of months where like people can tell if you're starting to wing information or if you're not quite up to date. And then it becomes disappointing because like instead of it being a fun experience, like you just get shat on by everybody for not knowing like random tidbits of information, and it just becomes like really discouraging over time. It's just like, yeah, like you should be on, you should know, like people will complain saying like you should know all this information, but like keep in mind like this kind of leads to my next point. Commentators, as much as people assume like the rates, like it's not very lucrative. So um, what I mean by this is like if I go to some grassroots events, the expectation is I don't play in the tournament and I'm commentating multiple blocks. But the compensation is usually anywhere from like $200 to $500, which to a lot of people they're like, wow, that's a lot of money. Like I can't believe commentators are being so greedy asking for more. But let's say like I traveled like and I flew to an event and I wasn't allowed to play in the tournament. I had to do 7 to 8 blocks. And then I also had to cover hotel, airfare, parking, Ubers. Like airfare can easily be like 250 to 400, and a hotel, like even if I'm sharing a room, could easily be like $100 to $200. So that compensation of like $200 to $500 doesn't even cover my travel, and the expectation is that I cover, spend my entire weekend on commentary, and that I can't even play in the tournament. So like for me, it's like, over time it becomes like what's the incentive for me to really do this? Because like I'm putting in all this work and I'm making negative money. So like over time you kind of realize like how stressful it becomes. And then you kind of go like, okay, is there like anything bigger than losing money like every weekend? And some events that are sponsored by like big tournaments or like big companies do pay like decently well. It's like between like $1,000 to $2,000 for an entire weekend, which is pretty good. But like over time you kind of begin to wonder like over like let's say you like grind it out for a year of commentary and you're even doing top 8 gigs, like your net take home money after like travel and everything is probably next to $0. And so like all that work, like granted like you'll get the top 8 and you might get a few compliments on Reddit or Twitter saying how good a commentary you are, like it becomes this huge time sink. And that's probably a big reason why you look at most of the older commentators, why they kind of just moved on and stopped doing commentary, just because it just simply wasn't worth the amount of effort and time it really took to really be good at it, but also not be like compensated whatsoever. Um, and so that's kind of like my issue with commentary and why I kind of gave up on it. And so I think there are certain people. I always think that with the way that Smash commentary compensates, like it's always going to be a revolving door of turnover. So like you're always going to see like new fresh blood come into commentary, and they're going to be like really excited and gung ho to rise up the ranks. And then once like they get to like their first or second or third year, they're going to be like, oh, like it's nice, but like it's hard for me to keep justifying spending all this time when like you're not like making money, and it just becomes like more of a time sink because of all the information you had to like learn and accumulate to be still relevant. So those are like just kind of my general complaints, and I don't really have a solution for it. Wobbles and other people are saying, well, like Smash commentators should just do this for the love of the game, and like that's nice, but like when I have to make decisions, like for me personally, when I have to make decisions between like having to spend 4 to 5 hours on like a Thursday or Friday night to like watch Melee just to keep up, or go out with my family, or like go out and do social stuff, and just with my relationships that I have to maintain, like it becomes more and more of a tough decision with how much little time I have, and people around my age, like as they hit their 30s or like their mid to late 20s, like how much more difficult it becomes. Because I think a lot of people in like Smashing are younger, they're in college, like they have a lot more time. And when you're a young adult and you freshly get out of school, like you tend to have a lot more time to just fill, where you're not really doing much after work. But like as you get later in your career, that just becomes a lot more of a tough thing to manage. And so it perfectly makes sense that like Scar, Toph, myself, like Blur, and most of the other commentators that have careers are not commenting as much as we used to. And that's why you're seeing a new influx of commentators that are younger, that seem to have energy and to have passion for doing it, or don't really have like a career outside of Smash. No offense, like I think if you want to go for a career in Smash, that's totally fine. But the people who are kind of like maintaining themselves in Smash are the ones that don't have like outside careers. So that's kind of just my dilemma. Like maybe Smash commentary is always just going to be a revolving door where you have people excited for like a year or two, and then they just kind of, as they get busy, they kind of just move on to like their careers or their personal lives, and then you have a new influx of other commentators that come in that are willing to learn, and then they leave after 2 years. But on the flip side, like it kind of sucks too because you don't get to retain the really good talent. Let's say we have like three scars and three like just imagine your favorite commentator in Smash. Like, let's say we had like four of them pass through the funnel, but we really couldn't keep them dedicated to becoming a better Smash commentator because of just life decisions. That's where it gets like really crappy. Um, so those are just that's my general ramble. Like, I think Smash. Don't get me wrong. Like, I hope people don't leave with like the fact. Like, I don't dismiss the fact that Smash commentary can be a lot better. I think there's so many things that could be done better. So if we're to like look at things that Smash commentary could improve on, first off, I'm gonna say that knowing every region's players is unnecessary, and I think it shouldn't be an expectation. I think that should be handled on a production end, and I think that maybe it's a companion goal or whatever that we have a group of people just maintain and have a running Google Doc, and that there's communication between the TO, the stream runner, the streamer, and the commentator, so that they're constantly fed information of the players, so they don't have to memorize everybody's information all the time. So first off, I'm not going to advocate that like commentators should memorize all that information. I just think it's not necessary, and it's a huge waste. It's a huge time sink that doesn't give much value. So that's number one. I do think the other thing that could be done. So I think knowledge of the game and game mechanics is an important skill. I think you need a minimum threshold of game knowledge to talk about the game. I don't think you have to be an expert. So I think there warrants some benefit from understanding game mechanics and how the game works and how matchups work. So I'm not going to dismiss that. I think that's really important, and I think we could do a lot better on that. I also do think that charisma and entertainment are a huge role. I think when people think of esports, a lot of people peg it to just be like this lifeless, soulless, like soulless thing. But I think one important thing you have to highlight, and what some of my mentors have told me in commentary, is that it has to be entertaining. Like, and sometimes, and that means like this is why Scar works so well, is because he's full of charisma and he's very entertaining. And he passes the casual test where I think, for example, my fiance who's loosely into Smash, like, I think she could listen to Scar commentate because he has charisma, he has energy, and he's funny. And he's entertaining to listen to. Whether or not he's always talking about the match, like, entertainment and charisma are huge factors that a lot of people who are like, yeah, you should only talk about the match. Like, you should only be talking about game mechanics and all this like nerd frame data stuff. Like, it has to be entertaining. And don't get me wrong, you can be talking about the match and also be entertaining. So like those aren't completely independent of one another. And lastly, I do believe that. So for me personally, like I have decent game knowledge. My charisma's just okay, and unfortunately, I don't know how much more I can fix that. But the third thing that I did improve a lot on, and I do think that that's really important for commentary, is media training. I think there are a lot of basic things that a lot of people mess up, where if they went to like a media training class where they're taught how to look at the camera, they're taught how to interact with somebody else, how to signal, basic commentator etiquette, which a lot of people kind of just wing. It would smooth out so many small things and small hiccups that kind of come up, which for some, like, it's really hard to pinpoint exactly, but I think for certain commentators, you immediately know, like, they do all the technical stuff right, and even if they're not talking about the things you want to talk about, like, they do all the little things right to still make it smooth and flow well with their co-commentators. And a big thing I see with a lot of commentators, it's really hard to notice unless you've been media trained, are the little things that, if they went to a class or they went to a training or a seminar, like, those things could be hammered out and be a lot more smooth. And so for people that are wondering, like, what makes, like, an Overwatch, like, stream or commentary a lot more smoother than the Melee commentary, it often comes down to these, like, little, like, media training things. Like, if they would have known about these kind of little etiquette, this, like, little etiquette here and there, like, it would be so much smoother. So this is just kind of my commentator ramble. Like, I think, I don't ever want to say like like we can definitely get a lot better. And I do agree that sometimes poor commentary and Smash probably does hinder a lot of people from joining our scene, which is really bad in terms of growth. So I'm always going to advocate that we can always be better. But at the same time, compensation and incentives really make it hard for commentators to really stay in the scene as they get older beyond a few years without burning out and really just seeing kind of purpose in commentary. Because the compensation is not quite there, but at the same time, there are so many things we can improve on. So those are my thoughts on commentary. It's kind of a ramble. Maybe you guys are just gonna be like, "Oh, Tafo is just whining and complaining," but these are just my personal experiences. To just end here, I think commentary for me has been very fun. I love to just share and talk about Melee. So don't get me wrong, like I've always loved doing commentary gigs. And I've always had a blast, just sharing about Melee, talking about Melee. So like my experiences have been great, but just really tough to maintain with all the other stuff that kind of goes on in my life to just be a better commentator. And I wish when I'm on the mic, like I always go in the back of my mind, like I wish I could do a better job. I wish I could do more, but it's just so hard when the compensation and the value isn't there for me when there's so many other competing things that are really pushing for my time and effort and my energy.